Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. Welcome back to another beta recap video. This week it's been all about the raiding. The first raid test delving into Karazhan, Gruul's Lair and Magtheridon's Lair are currently taking place, with two of them already happening and Magtheridon will be ongoing this evening. Now I know the raid testing hasn't quite come to a conclusion yet, but I don't think we're going to have any more surprises, so I sort of feel okay making the video now. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I kind of doubt it. Most notable feedback so far has been regarding Karazhan. I did some testing myself. I didn't complete a full run. We had to have some people go. Testing's always quite early in the morning for Europe, so it is what it is. But at least from what I saw personally and what I've seen other people experience within the raid, it's been not what we expected it to be. Now I've heard all kinds of things after testing. It's post-nerf, the trash is harder than bosses, something that can be CC'd shouldn't be able to, creator is too hard, bosses have too little health, wow this is just easier than I remembered. And you know, it's not all wrong. So I mean, what do I think? Is Karazhan too easy? Was it too hard? Do we need to buff the raid? Honestly, I don't really care. All that matters, is it pre-nerf? Is it a recreation how the raid was initially minus the bugs? No, it wasn't. That wasn't what we tested whatsoever. We tested some makeup of post and pre-nerf. It was just a bit all over the place. Community manager Kyvax made this post testing, mentioning our intended first phase encounter settings weren't being applied properly in the beta. First testing though, right? That's encouraging. Surely that's the point of a beta, to get it right, because as of the testing we did on Tuesday, there is quite a bit to get right still. Like badges dropping from bosses, for instance, that shouldn't happen until 2.3 or Zul'Aman, which will be phase 4 for us in our projected timeline. And for once, a lot of the whole min-max of comps and gear wasn't even part of the conversation. Paladins and Shamans were spawned in on template gear without any healer set. Tanks had leather. Paladins couldn't hit any of the crit or crush caps, so they could get absolutely deleted. In fact, my level 60 lock right now on the beta has much better stats than the 70 template ones we did for the tests, minus the diminishing returns as you level up on stats like hit and crit, of course. But yeah, the template gear we got was just not very good. It wasn't hit cap, and I can say with a good degree of certainty will almost for every class be worse than what you'll be actually running into Karazhan with, I feel. And Karazhan did feel a bit like Molten Core, I think. The trash could delete your tanks, whilst the bosses were comparatively very easy, albeit not pre-nerf. Now we know from BlizzCon they've said they intend to do pre-nerf content with modifications. What modifications will end up being is kind of up to them, which is a point that can raise some concern. Looking at some patch notes, I could see things which would fit modifications. For example, patch 2.0.10, Maiden of Virtue's Holy Wrath has been slightly retuned to try and allow additional melee attackers to be used against her. So if you go into Karazhan melee heavy, you aren't going to be sitting at the back pressing auto shot. I think that's quite good. From 2.1 here, Shade of Aran's Flame Reef should completely ignore pets, summon guardians and mind-controlled NPCs, as well as Nether Protection will no longer cause Flame Reef to detonate. Both of those sound like reasonable things they could implement. Those are just some ideas, along with things which were actually considered bugs, of course. But other things were in the beta test, such as the creator spawning 1 spark and then next round 3, which changed up the boss difficulty quite a bit. Unfortunately, it looks like it was unintended, as I heard Blizzard later changed it only to ever spawn 1 spark, which kind of removed the challenge from the encounter. On Nightbane, the restless skeletons were vulnerable to all damage and did not have immolation. They should have a little aura around them that ticks for some fire damage and only be able to be damaged via holy attacks. All this stuff here for Nightbane in general wasn't on the encounter, and it functioned like the post 2.1 nerfed version. Examples of other things that weren't included, such as Shade of Aran wasn't using Dragon's Breath as per the 2.1 nerf, Skeletal Ushers could be shackled, again this was a 2.1 nerf, Romulo's Daring was nerfed down to 35% haste and damage from 50%, and just boss health in general seemed low, but maybe it was right and we just did that much damage. Blizzard, and this is true throughout the duration of TBC, also did a lot of very vague hot fixes or updates back in the day, and I'm hoping they actually have the numbers somewhere, and on their side it doesn't say they just retuned it slightly, because what nerf does that even mean? I'm guessing it was a nerf, but just by how much? The thing is though, I don't want Karazhan to be this incredibly difficult, hardly anyone's going to be able to see Prince mega hard raid. I just want it to be pre-nerf, and in pretty much every way that involves making it a little bit harder. If they do correct pre-nerf and the raid is still easy, the raid is easy. If there are a few encounters where you need to watch out and do the mechanics correctly, well, you know, that'd be pretty good as well. Lots of people are after a real challenge after Classic, and even if Karazhan is true to how it was pre-nerf, I don't expect it to be that challenge right after. In fact, it doesn't look as though Gruul, or we'll see with Magtheridon, but I think it'll be the same case, that they won't be either. And in fact, I may do a whole video on the subject of expected raid difficulty, but I don't think having one raid difficulty goes well with actually having difficult raids at all. For instance, there's been less clears on the first boss of Mythic on retail for the current raid tier compared to the whole of Naxxramas, and they were released about 2 weeks apart, for example. Anyway, not to go off topic, I'll leave that there. So to recap the raid testing so far, WoW Tier 4 first testing is easy. The optimist in me says it's good to have things that are easy to make sure that mechanics are working, like they did with Naxxramas when they gave us that aura buff that just gave us loads more damage and healing. In fact, why didn't they do that with Karazhan? Anyways, the raid was easy, and it's missing mechanics on a number of fights, so I feel it definitely needs a revision and a retest pre-launch where the bosses have all their pre-nerf mechanics intact that we can test are working properly. Just give us the pre-nerf for the encounters, minus the bugs. Whether they end up being hard or easy, it doesn't matter, just focus on pre-nerf. Professions. Moving with the release of the raid test realm, we've been able to confirm a few more things. Blizzard have taken the progressive nature of drums and expanded them to a few more items, rather than having everything starting on patch 2.4.3. We found out on the raid test realm that drums did in fact have the cast time in addition to the smaller range, so they are the full-on pre-nerf version that we got prior to Zul'Aman, which weren't changed up till 2.3 in actual TBC, and for us in Zul'Aman there's going to be a new pattern dropped which will expand them to the buffed version at that point in time. There were also no engineering goggles, which were initially brought out in patch 2.1, which would be Black Temple or phase 3 for us. The blacksmithing weapons are main hand only, so if this goes live, enhancement shamans will only be able to equip one Dragon Maw or Dragon Strike or whichever other version you have, and they were initially main hand in TBC all the way up to right near the end of the expansion. Now, possibly what we're seeing here is Blizzard has just certain datasets running on an earlier patch, and if we're talking about pre-nerf tier 4, all of these things that we're seeing here would be technically correct. And they sort of did this for Classic. We had items like Nightfall and Titanic Leggings. They were both made through blacksmithing, and they were not out till phase 3 and 5 respectively. Then again, we did have some drops in the game straight from the beginning of phase 1, which were not introduced until later patch, as well as just updated itemization, such as Onslaught Girdle or Bone Reaver's Edge were not in from launch originally, or the Banthok Sash from Arena and BRD, which was pre-bis for casters at the start of Classic, but originally back at the same time in vanilla it would have been absolutely garbage. Progressive professions, but everything else is on 2.43, maybe? If they're doing raids pre-nerf, this would match our power level a bit more to the content at the time when it would have been if the raids are also pre-nerf. Then again, we already have our 2.43 classes, our itemization, our talents, which are going to be boosting our power levels quite a bit already, so it's a bit of a pick and mix between, yeah, we're going to hold this thing back, but this can start on the later patch instead. But as I say, it could have just been for the purpose of the testing server, because that is the data they've imported. We don't know how things look on their end. We just have to sort of hope they quote unquote get it right one way or another. Either way, if you've given the raids a tester tour, you can let me know how it goes from the perspective of maybe a newer player to them, somebody who did them back in the day, and what you thought about them, because I hope there is a retest with all the correct mechanics implemented so we can really make sure it's working pre-nerf, whether that end up being easy or hard. Also, what do you think about the professions? Would you want them to be progressive, or just throw everything on 2.43 and just let it go as it should be? Because I can't help feeling, even if drums have a cast time and are 8-yard range, they're still going to be the best profession for pretty much everybody, right? 5% haste for the entire encounter just seems a bit too good to pass up. Then again, most encounters in our gear on the test realm were over in a matter of a couple minutes, so who knows? Then again, if you want to get the most out of your character, you're going to do it regardless. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. I'll try and keep you up to date with the goings on the beta. It is moving relatively quickly at the moment. As always, though, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all on the next one very soon.